Stopped? It's like they're unstoppable.
Yeah, I have.
Me too.
What's their mystique?
Nothing stops these people.
Don't stop.
Welcome to Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso. You're about to meet some of the most amazing people.
Stop. Don't stop.
They've accomplished their goals despite insurmountable odds. They beat adversity, physical hardship, and traumatic events, and emerged triumphantly. They're people just like you and me, and they're winners. Are you unstoppable? Here's Frankie to show you how.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Mission Unstoppable, and I definitely have an unstoppable guest here with me today, somebody you are going to want to meet and listen to because she's extraordinary. You are going to meet a fascinating lady. She's a unique blend of masculine and feminine energy. She spent much of her career in a male-dominated world. She joined the military after 9/11, and later she pursued espionage and terrorism suspects as a civilian. She's a radio host. She's the CEO of Superpower Experts, where she spends her days convincing people that superpowers are real and recruiting other powerful mutants. I love that. She's the author of W.A.R, W-A.R, Watch, Assess, React, the ultimate guide to personal power and safety, and her name is Tonya Dawn Recla. Welcome again.
Oh, hello, Frankie. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. It's, such a treat to have you here. Your book is amazing. It really is. And I love what you're doing with Superpower Experts, and I'm going to get to that. But, I do like to take everybody on a journey back to the beginning because I do want my listeners to know, how did you become unstoppable and how they can become unstoppable too, or at least believe they can. Right now they're mutants in training, maybe. Or maybe they are unstoppable. I don't know.
I like it.
Yeah. Well, you started off life, you were born in Kansas, you moved to Arizona as a toddler, and I wanted to know, if you had thought about what life might be like had you grown up in Kansas and not gone to Arizona. Would you have been a special agent?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's so hard to tell, but as I look back on my life in retrospect, I can absolutely see how all the pieces fit together. So I'd imagine if you took out one of those pieces or altered it, that the entire picture would change. So, we went back and forth to Kansas a lot when I was a child. We had extended family there. And I remember on one trip we drove through Liberal, Kansas. And if you've never been there, it's very small. They've got Dorothy's house and the largest ball of twine. And I remember my dad sharing with us that, when we moved to Tucson, he had a job offer in Liberal or Tucson, Arizona. And it was a big move for my folks to leave. Because no one had left yet. And so, and I remember very clearly kind of looking around going, wow, like what would it have been like growing up here instead of in Tucson? And I mean, Tucson was a booming metropolis comparatively, right? So, so I would probably imagine no. I doubt that my life would have taken that trajectory. I'm sure it would have been interesting nonetheless.
I drove through Kansas once, and I just remember, once. I just remember, big skies, big open skies. But I always wondered, why are people living here when they know a tornado's going to come and wreck it all for them?
It's just inevitable.
Yeah, especially if you live in a trailer. Don't live in a trailer in Kansas.
I know. It's like it attracts them. I don't know.
I know. Exactly. It's like there's a lightning rod on top going. That's pretty funny. So were they farmers, the family, or what was?
Somewhere. Yeah, somewhere. I still have an aunt and uncle who farm, and then my grandparents. So that I have very, very fond memories of the farm as a kid. And then my grandfather was really just brilliant and creative. And so he turned the farm into a quail farm. And so he found a niche, like the ultimate entrepreneur, back in the day, and had all kinds of species of quail. And it was just, it was just amazing. So many amazing memories.
Yeah. I grew up on a farm too. We had a farm, I didn't grow up on it, but we stayed there a lot and I loved it. Just love that whole life.
Well, and what's funny is that my husband and I, our first entrepreneurial venture was Recla Ranch. Last day being Recla. And we raised chickens and rabbits and again, the entrepreneurial blood. We sold over, I think, 4,000 birds
Wow.
Because my husband told me, Justin said that I told him I wanted chickens, and we had a little eighth of an acre, little house, kind of concept. And when I told him I wanted chickens, he's like, "That's great, but you have to figure out how to sell them." And I was like, "All right, challenge accepted."
Wow.
So I found a niche market, and then we moved on to 9 acres and developed the ranch and everything. So
That's cool.
it's very silly.
No, it's kind of fun though. Challenges are fun, right? I mean, for
we had a
me and
blast.
people like us, they're a lot of fun. For other people, they don't like them so much. But did you have any siblings?
Yep. I have a younger brother, my baby brother, and an older sister. My baby brother is an officer in the Navy, and my sister lives in Canada. And both are amazing human beings.
Where does she live? I'm sure I don't know her.
Just south of Edmonton.
Oh, okay. People
That
always
would be
Canada's
weird.
so small, right? Because I'm in Canada right here. I live just outside of Toronto. And they go, "Do you know?" No, I don't.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, it is kind of funny, actually. I went to join the Army once.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
a lot older than you. I was a lot younger. I'm a lot older than you. But yeah, first I went to join the Air Force. And I said, "If I join the Air Force, will you let me fly?" And they said, "No." And I'm like, "Okay." So
then why would I do that?
yeah, exactly. And then I went to the Navy. I go, "If I join the Navy, will you let me fly?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Okay." So I start to walk out, and the guy from the Army, he runs out and he goes, "Hey, how come you didn't come in here?" And I'm like, "Who the hell wants to join the Army?"
Yep. Yeah, well then that's the thing.
If you have horses, maybe I'll be, a Mountie or something. Yeah, that was kind of funny. But you did, you went, you got the call, like after 9/11, you got, something propelled you to go and go, "No, they're not going to do this to us."
It's so bizarre because when I was in college, my bachelor's degree was intercultural communication. My master's degree was in the field of critical race theory, and very liberal, very, very. I mean, we picketed the Republican debates, really anti-government, military, everything. And I don't know. I think a series of events occurred, or I'm not even really sure. I can't say consciously what occurred there, but something happened at 9/11. And at the time, you laugh about the difference between the Air Force and the Army, and I don't know if it's the same in Canada, but here, the Army is one of the easiest places to get a specific job if you enlist. Yeah. And so that was the thing. I had a master's degree and I was 27, and I went to the recruiter and they're like, "Well, you need to be an officer." And I was like,
"Of course."
But the challenge with that was that you weren't guaranteed a job. Mm-hmm. So you could be guaranteed your officer rank, but you weren't guaranteed what position or what, kind of type of specialty you would do. And so I enlisted, and then they thought I was nuts and told me I couldn't do it, but I did it anyway. And so but I wanted counterintelligence, and that was the only job I would accept, and that's what I did. It still kind of baffles me. None of it really makes any sense, but it worked out pretty well.
Well, if you're going to do it, I think that's where I would like to go, because that's pretty exciting.
It was exciting.
I mean, and actually, I was in Louisville at the time. I went to apply for all those jobs with the military. Okay. But so tell me, counterintelligence, like, what about it really intrigued you? And what about, did you think, was it the same as, what you see on TV? Was it just like long hours of waiting and watching and waiting and watching? And
well, what's so funny about that question is that, my Army career was very short because I got medically discharged. I got pretty seriously injured. And so I was only in active duty for about 1 year and 4 months, and then they medically discharged. It would have been a little bit shorter, but I was very stubborn, and I resisted, and I didn't want to get discharged. And I had orders to Germany, and I wanted to go to Germany. Like, I had all this drama.
Wow.
But in the course of that, an agency had kind of caught wind of me and then recruited me out of that. And so as if I had stayed enlisted, it would have looked nothing like what it did on TV and in the movies. But because events turned and I was recruited by this agency, I was able to do, like my husband tells people, I got to do all the sexy stuff because he's in the field. He was in the field also.
Okay. Is that where you met?
Yeah. Well, we met teaching at the counterintelligence special agent course.
Oh, okay.
When we taught new agents. And so, so I did get to do surveillance, and I did get to do the investigative aspects of espionage. And what appealed to me about espionage or the counterintel arena was the mind game. I really have always been fascinated with human behavior, and espionage is just a really unique arena. It's a difficult crime to convict for. And so there's a lot of mind games that go into it. It's kind of a big chess game. And that really appealed to me, puzzling all of that.
Do you think that, and I'm going to say this, loosely, or maybe not so much, but as a woman, I think we tend to have use our intuition a lot more than men do. So as a female in counterintelligence, I would assume that intuition played a large part in what you did. And it's funny because you can't always prove it to other people, the engineer types in the room, but I wonder if that helped.
Far more than I realized at the time. In fact, I always kind of felt like a fish out of water, one, because it was a very hyper-masculine virus. So not only was I in the intel arena, but I was also embedded in the military within the intel arena. And so, it was like double dose of just hyper-patriarchy, masculine energy, kind of the eat your own mentality. Counterintel is a tough field. Any field where stuff is classified, I think is a tough field, because it's like you can't. The only way people found out what you did is if you screwed up. Yeah. And so you got all these, alpha type personalities kind of in the midst of this, and the only people you can really talk to about what you do are people who are doing the same thing. So it's not a big deal, right? So you don't get the accolades. You don't really get the
like, oh my God, are you ever amazing?
Because you can't tell anybody, So it creates this really interesting mix of energy. And
what did you tell people you did?
The story changed every time.
Okay, I want to go back to that. We've got 30 seconds before a commercial, but it's kind of interesting. Give me one before we go to break.
Well, we were at a bar one time, and we were on mission, and some guys had come up and were talking to us, and so at that time it was a sex therapist. I was watching one of the cable TV shows. I can't remember the name of it now. Had a whole sex therapist kind of ideology, and so I just kind of replayed an episode from that as I was explaining to him what I had done.
We're gonna go to a break. Tonya Dawn Recla, she is crazy check. Okay, don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso will continue right after these messages.
Stop.
It's words you never heard.
Halloween is almost here, and the scarecrows, or tatty doolies as the Scottish call them, are out. But Halloween is all about trick-or-treating, and that means candy. The average American eats 24 pounds of candy a year, and most of that consumption occurs around Halloween. What do you call a person who loves to eat? A grand gosier. Popular costumes for this year are happy face and wink face emojis. Of course, since it's a presidential election year, there are various costume choices for those who wish to dress up as Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton or Republican candidate Donald Trump. If you ask me, the only thing scarier than Halloween this year is the presidential election. What's another word for the fear of Halloween? Samhainophobia.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
In this day and age, eating at home has become more difficult. Harvard Medical School offers tips for healthy eating away from home to keep you on track with your healthy, low-calorie eating. When ordering at a restaurant, ask how the food is prepared, as this will help you make appropriate choices. Look for less by choosing lean meats and lower-calorie choices. Practice portion control. And if the portion is too big, don't be afraid to ask for a doggy bag instead of eating it all. Order an extra side of vegetables and fill up on those first. Do your research before you go to the restaurant. Most menus and nutritional information are online, and you can check before you go. They say that by following these simple tips, you can make your dining experience as healthy as it is enjoyable. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond.
Unstoppable Radio. I am your host, Frankie Picasso. My guest today is Tonya Dawn Recla. And before we went to break, she was telling us that her alter ego personality, one of them, was a sex therapist because, you know, when you're a super spy, you can't tell people who you really are. So, like, you're the only chick in the game and, you know, you're hanging out in a bar. Were you hanging out with the other guys or by yourself?
I was. Yeah, actually, that mission, we actually had a couple other females on the team, which was very rare. Very rare.
So that's pretty cool. Oh my gosh, you're sex therapist. And did they believe you?
Oh my gosh. Oh my. Well, one of the other females on the team jumped in the middle, and she said she'd been one of my clients. And so he's like, well, what did you do for her? And we had this guy go and like, we said that, you know, her husband wasn't satisfied with their sex life. And so he was wanting her to dress up in these outfits. And we got going with it. And by the time we were done, he's like, well, where would somebody like find someone like you if they wanted help in that area? And I'm like, oh, the Yellow Pages. Yeah. Like that's,
that's a good place for it.
Yeah. Where do you look up? I'm like, psychologist. Look up psychology, and then under psychology, it'll be sex therapy. I was like, oh my gosh, Tonya, shut up. This poor guy.
Yeah. He was salivating at the end of it all, for sure.
He was very tempted.
Were you single then?
I was. It was very challenging to be in a relationship in that field.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, a lot of divorce in that arena.
Yeah. What was the... I know that, you know, we talk about no fear, and you talk a lot about it in your book, actually in WAR. But, you know, I mean, everybody has a healthy amount of fear because it keeps you alive, I think. What was the scariest thing you ever did? Can you say?
I felt like I was really, really terrible at surveillance, especially like in the car. I didn't mind it so much. I felt a little more protected. On the ground, it was terrible. And I remember my mind doesn't work that way. Like you were asking before about the intuition and stuff, and my mind just doesn't work in details. Like it works very abstractly and conceptually. And so it was the detail piece of it really escaped me. And so, you know, getting on the ground on a mission when you hadn't seen the target, you had a description, you had pictures, but it's nothing that's like seeing the person in real life. And we had a target one time that was a pretty bad character, and I will never forget going face to face with him. And that was never the goal of surveillance, but I just, you know, all of a sudden I'm looking at this guy and he kind of makes contact with me and smiles like, you know, he's trying to pick me up. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, wait a second, like 6 foot something, gray sweater, shit.
This is the dude. It's the guy
him right there. And I'm like, I mean, it was in my heart stopped. Like it terrified me. You know, and
so what did you do? Like, did you play along?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I had to I don't think I'm hoping it wasn't as awkward as I felt like it was.
Yeah.
But if you'd asked me, it was like, you know, I lost all ability to be professional. And
he probably thought he was just so hunky that you just went,
gaga over him, which is great. But again, in surveillance, like the key is to not be detected. So that's an error in and of itself. But it was, my team, they'd have to kick me out of the car, and they did one time. I was super resistant to, and I ended up testifying in federal court because of it. And I'm like, come on. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're so lucky. And I was like, no, wrong place, wrong time, wrong person. I don't want to be here.
Wow.
But they couldn't keep women in surveillance. It's just a tough, excruciating schedule. And so I agreed to do it part-time, you know, in addition to investigations. But I never felt comfortable in it.
Well, you know, I've seen pictures of you with long blonde hair, red hair, you know, all different kinds of, you know, looks. And now, is that from your days of espionage? Did you have to, you know, change your look all the time? Or are you just like me and just love change?
Some of it came from that because, you know, we did have to be able to change. In fact, I got LASIK and stuff because my wearing glasses was a challenge, and contacts were too difficult in what we were doing. And so I did end up getting LASIK so that there wouldn't be any kind of signature element to me. But I've always, I'm like 6 foot tall. Like there's just,
are you?
I don't blend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's
wow. People are going to remember a chick that tall.
Well, and I remember the attorney coming up to me, like I said, at federal court, and he's like, I never would have pinged you for surveillance. And I was like, well, isn't that kind of the point? But not because I blended, just because I don't look the part.
Okay. Yeah.
So I guess I had that going for me. I don't know. I never felt like I fit it. Like I feel like I was like the worst surveillance person like ever in the world, but I got to do some pretty amazing things. So I guess it worked.
Yeah. I guess that worked.
I guess so.
You okay, we're gonna get into some nitty-gritty here. You're a total badass. Like you can whoop somebody and throw them across the room. You're 6 feet tall. But you mentioned in your book that twice you were raped. Now, I'm wondering if these were the traditional. I get the feeling that this might have been somebody that you knew and you just let it happen. You didn't want it to, but you did. But you did.
Both times. Yeah,
so it's not that traditional where you think, somebody grabbed you and took you off somewhere, but they're still both the same thing. And it's doing something that you really didn't want to do, but you did. Mm-hmm. And you figured out years later why.
Yeah. Well, and that's the challenge, right? Is the beginning, I was 16, I was a virgin, and it was someone I wasn't necessarily dating him, but I did know him. He was a friend of mine, if you will.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, in that situation, I didn't feel raped until everybody told me that that's what had happened, and I didn't get that. Then,
well, did they tell you that you were raped because you should still be a virgin or something, or did they tell you that because they felt that you had
because of the circumstances?
Okay.
Like again, I just have a bizarre mind, and so my mind is very investigative. It's very like gathering information stuff. Mm-hmm. So. And I didn't know anything about the energy body and all this other stuff. So, of course, now I can look back and realize, like, I pretty much just vacated my body and then watched everything unfold. But I didn't know that then. I was 16. And so... Yeah. So
I think a lot of women do that, actually.
They do. Well, we work with a ton of people that's a very natural part of trauma. And trauma can be anything from somebody looking at you funny and then you internalize it and fragment out and you leave your body because it's an uncomfortable situation. Yeah. So trauma takes all kinds of different kind of roles in our existence. But in that situation, the details, certainly qualify as rape. It just wasn't necessarily a violent rape. And part of that was my own, vacating the situation energetically. But I didn't internalize it as that. It was more just confounding to me because I do have such a kind of curious nature to myself. It was like, well, why would I do that? Like, what was that about? And it wasn't until I confronted him and said, what was that about? Because I was still kind of like, what happened there? Like I said, no, like all these things. And I remember distinctly, being held down, but not, I didn't have a black eye. I didn't get cut or anything like that.
Right. And were you ever afraid while he was doing it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Very afraid, but not necessarily, like more afraid of worsening the situation. And I think there was a whole collective story around, don't make it worse. Yeah. You don't want to anger somebody in that situation because they may kill you. And so that's where a lot of that came from, I think. And I don't know where I picked up that story, but
that makes sense, though.
Yeah, and it was like survive at all costs. And so that was the tack that I took. But it wasn't until I confronted him and said, what was that about, that he kind of looked at me and I said, but that was rape. Like I was a virgin. Like I was just trying to get an understanding. And he said, yeah, well, that's what guys do. And I never felt really raped until that moment.
Wow, that's what guys do.
And it was just such a disregard for, like I didn't even feel like my innocence. I felt nothing until that moment. It was just like, oh. And it just felt so disregarded. Like it just felt like, of course, like you are powerless but to accept your role in existence as the recipient of this behavior. And so I was like, oh.
I think it's an important point you're making, though, because, a lot of kids in high school, men, boys in high school, whatever, they that is their goal. Their only goal is to not be a virgin when they graduate. Mm-hmm. Right? And at all costs find a willing vagina. And if you can't find a willing one, get one that, isn't going to say no.
Well, we have such a screwed up sense of how to raise kids and communication and everything. We're still, regardless of how far we've come, we still teach girls that it's not okay to want it. And we still teach boys that your job is to pursue it. And so it's like, well, of course we have some screwed up communication, right? Like, and I can, and I can see how it all unfolded. And to his credit, it was like, that's the message he got,
Right.
So it's like, blah, 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 all that garbledy-gook. And, so I'm at least trying to do my part in encouraging people to be a bit more honest in their communication, especially with themselves. Because one of the things I hadn't done is I didn't really know what my comfortable boundaries were. I was just so curious and, like, again, investigative. Like, it was all a big research project to be like, oh, why would he do that? And what's it
But then
about?
years later, when you had all the military
16
training
years
and you knew that you could, whip his ass.
And I would have told you that I had done all kinds of therapy, that I was cured, right? Like, I had worked through everything. And like, like you were leading up to it, and it happened again. And we were on a mission, and it was a team member. And I would just remember thinking very clearly to myself, it was like I was that 16-year-old girl again. And I mean, I was armed. This was ridiculous, but it was, all I could play out in my head. And when I was younger, it was, there was all these other people that I didn't want to implicate in the process.
Right.
So I didn't want my parents to have to deal with it. I didn't want my younger brother to have to deal with like all these things. And the same thing came up years later, but it was the mission. They would have stopped the mission because you can't obviously have that going on a team.
Right. And you would have been blamed.
Oh, well, I don't know that that's the case, but I think
I
there was
suspect
some
you
of
might
that
have been
story.
blamed. Because women are always blamed. That he couldn't help himself. You were too beautiful. You're this or that or whatever the case is, right?
No, truly. Wiles.
Yeah, your feminine wiles. Because women are, that the gender, talk about the gender differences. Again, we all know that women are sluts if they have sex and men are heroes kind of thing. So, it's still that way. We're going to go to a commercial break. If you differ in opinion, let us know. That's fine. I love a differing opinion. I'm all for it. So you can actually, it's 903. What's the number here? 787. No, what's the number, Lisa? 787. Yeah, 5887. I was almost right there. 903-787-5887. You can call us if you want, if you think differently, but it's okay. We're going to come back with more Tonya Dawn Recla. Don't go anywhere.
Don't stop.
That's right, don't stop listening. Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso will continue right after these messages.
Stop.
It's merging never heard.
We have a book titled The Art of Doing Nothing by Veronica Bien in our guest room by the bed. I'm telling you, this book is an impossible challenge. In the state of Maine, it's said that someone who bottoms chairs for a living is lazy, presumably because one's bottom is perpetually in the chair. To sozzle means to laze around or perform a task in a sloppy way. The word is mainly found in New England. A quote from 1848 describes the term as used by housekeepers in certain parts of Connecticut to refer to a lazy person. Other words for lazy people are abbey lubbers, scabberlatchers, and slaughterpooches. To me, the ultimate loblolly is someone who is too lazy to even fake like they're working.
It's merging never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
What do nuts, fish, spinach, dairy, and bananas have in common? For one thing, they contain high amounts of potassium and can cut your risk for a stroke by as much as 21%. A stroke is a disruption in your brain's blood supply that happens when there's blockage in a blood vessel or a blood vessel bursts. Potassium is an electrolyte and is involved in muscle and nerve control and blood pressure regulation. It's needed for maintaining the body's fluid balance. Studies have suggested that diets high in potassium help maintain a healthy blood pressure and possibly protect against stroke and heart disease. But remember, regular daily exercise is your most excellent defense against stroke. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond. To hear other fitness and weight loss tips, visit our website at AnnetteHammond.com.
And we are back with my guest, Tonya. She's awesome. Isn't she great? Okay, so I mean, how many people? People actually talk about a hurricane. It looks like there's going to be one here. I'm just looking out my window, and my trees are going crazy. Okay, yeah. So we got through figuring out that a rape happened the second time, and this time, I guess like women who are abused in a way in marriage, you kind of don't want to talk about it or think about it. Did you talk about it to your sister or anybody?
No, not really. I'm very introspective, and so for me, it was more just kind of figuring out why, like really not being able to deny that something happened and that I wasn't as cured as maybe I thought I was.
Yeah.
And really getting to, okay, what was this about for me? And it's kind of like, okay, I didn't get the message the first time, so let's do this again. And I needed to see the juxtaposition of those two times. I could kind of excuse it at 16,
Sure.
but not at 32, and not as an agent. And so then I was forced, like I read about in the book, to really look at the cognitive aspects of power, and that was a piece that I had missed. And put it all together from that place. So it really was an amazing gift that I was given to dive into some aspects of myself and the collective stories that we have about victimization, and just really choosing to opt out of all of that and empower myself in a different way.
And what about him? Did you have a conversation with him?
No. I didn't. I really saw him for the pawn that he was, honestly, in that regard. And I can't say that I did immediately, but as quickly as possible was able to see that he really had given me a gift. And, of course, he has to deal with whatever karma. I mean, he was married and all these other things. And
okay.
That's his burden. Because a lot of people came back after me and said, why don't you go after him? I was like, trust me when I say that he's having to atone for that. I don't need to take part in that. What I was able to do was really be in gratitude for just the role that he played in my existence, so that I could look at some of these things. That's what we do.
That's a really great, and that's a really great, perspective to have on things that happen to us. And, if you're into the metaphysical as I am, and so metaphysically you look at that and go, well, maybe I asked for that before I came here. Maybe that was a lesson I wanted to learn. I was being too hard-headed and, not getting it. And so they set you up again to get the lesson. And there you go.
Yeah, I look at it more like it's like I have this vision of all of us prior to incarnating, kind of sitting around this round table and like divvying up all of the social ills that we agreed to transmute here. Yeah. And so it's like I took rape and women's issues and some other fun things, and other people took on other burdens. And it's like our job is to either we can feed the collective stories that have held us entrapped by those, or we can each do our part to transmute those energies and create something different. And that's just what I chose in that moment. I didn't after the first one. I thought I did. I thought I was empowered. And if you had asked anybody, I was very powerful, very confident, but it wasn't an intrinsic strength. I didn't realize all the ways that I was raping myself on a daily basis, like not inserting myself into my existence. And that's very common.
And you talk in your book about, the power of no. So you learn to say no. No,
I did as a whole sentence.
No, I'm not going to do that. No, I don't want that. No, it's going to be this way. Thank you so much. No.
Yeah, but just little things like, no, I don't want to go see the movie. I'd rather sit on my couch and read a book, and insisting that insisting of yourself that you develop friendships that allow you the freedom to do that.
Right.
And relationships that support you in that. And if you say, I just don't feel like going to a movie today, that should be okay.
Yeah. But I think it comes down to values. What do you value? And for me, like my top 5 values, number 1 is freedom. So, if you know your values and possibly that's what you figured out is that freedom, or is your number 1 value too. And you need to be free to say no without anybody hurting you back kind of thing. No is no, it's fine. I just don't want to do it. And you know what? I'm really easygoing, and everything is okay. I don't care until I care. And then when I care, I'll tell you how it's going to be. And
exactly.
So people might say, well, they can walk over you. No, you're not walking over me because I don't care. When I care, that's what I'm going to do. Me.
Well, I think you're talking about the difference between the persona that we play versus the core essence of who we are. And when it finally when I finally got that the essence of who I am and its purity and its divinity and its infiniteness is doesn't care about, what I'm going to eat today or what I'm going to do, all this stuff. Like, we have to kind of traverse through that, I think, and have an opinion and really give ourselves permission to say, maybe I don't want to eat chocolate ice cream anymore or whatever the case may be. But then on the other side of that is the knowingness that the pure essence of who we are wants and needs for nothing. Mm-hmm. And so in that regard, ultimately, we don't really care. That's the persona that we play that cares, and we have different personas that we play. Mm-hmm. And so there's a distinction, but it really depends on where you're at in the personal power journey. And I would contend that everybody is seeking their own sovereignty and autonomy. That I think freedom is something that drives everybody, whether or not they acknowledge it, and it looks different at different stages.
Well, maybe, I don't know. I think there are some individuals, male and female, who like to be told what to do. They don't like to make a decision.
But that's their persona.
That's their persona.
The essence of who they are.
So would you consider yourself a feminist or a humanist?
Oh, probably neither. I mean, I don't know that I would lay claim to either of those labels. I'm an individualist, if you will, if nothing.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about your book, and your book is, geared to women and telling women that they have power, and that, but there are men too who don't have power. And I'm thinking, you fought for your country, and we have, a misogynist on as a president. I wonder, does that bother you? Do you ever think about that aspect of him?
I get asked that all the time. I don't see it that way. Okay. I see that as a collective, we're not done with that archetype. When we're done with that archetype, nobody will need to play it anymore. We've asked him to play a role, so we can either point fingers and blame him for taking on the role that we've asked him to play, or we can look at what does that serve in our collective and how do we transmute it so that we no longer need somebody to play that role.
And that is a very enlightened way to look at it. I don't know if everybody's there yet, but I like it, and it's interesting because Byron Katie said something very similar, like people were all in oh my God, Chicken Little, right? She goes, yeah, but is the sky really falling? Like, can you 100% really say that it is? And they're like, no. Okay, well then why are you going there until it does?
Not only that,
don't go there.
We asked for change.
Yeah.
I was really shocked at how many thought leaders, New Age, enlightened individuals who kind of tout themselves as being these spiritual leaders, gave into that fear story. And it was baffling to me until I kind of saw what was happening. And it was, but ultimately we asked for change. We don't get to control for change. Change is change, and it's chaotic and it's messy and it's gross. And it's like we just get to swim around in it for a minute until we integrate what needs to be integrated. To me, it actually shows the insecurity and the fear of individuals who want to kind of blame and point fingers more than it says anything about him. In fact, I on a very, very, very high level, I honor the fact that he agreed to play that role. It's showing us the dark underbelly of all of us. Yeah. And we can ignore it and we can make it about him, or we can take ownership and say, this is ours. Collectively, individually, this is ours. And if it's triggering you, if what I'm saying right now is triggering you, you can take it as an opportunity to look at yourself, or you can keep pointing fingers. But pointing fingers and laying blame just forces us to live more of the same.
Yeah. Well, you're right. Change happens best in chaos. And it's a lot easier to accept when everything is true. When things are chaotic and, you're in a crisis and everything comes back, all the particles fall in a different way. The last time I asked for something to change in my life, I got whacked with a tree trunk, really. And
literally.
Really. And I'm like, okay, I really want things to change in my life now, but please don't make it go the same way. I don't want to go the same way as I went last time.
They don't have to. They don't have to. We're just all addicted to that story. Yeah. And it's and until we're ready to release that, we'll keep acting it out. It really is. This life is very simple. It's very symbolic and it's very easy. It's just we're addicted to the tumultuousness. We're addicted to our dramas. It makes us feel alive. We're miserable, but we're comfortable in our misery. And so what's ironic is that the chaos and everything else, it's just everybody's living out their own personal hell. We just like to pretend that it's a collective experience. But it's like, really? Like, because if you just take a second and step back and elevate, what's really wrong? Like, what's really happened? You know, in our superpower net, it's our membership base for people who really want to play in these more abstract levels. Mm-hmm. And during the election and after the election, I challenged people to take a stance without trying to take someone else's power, you know? And so it's like, well, he's a bully, he's a this. I said, okay. And he's also a father, and he's also a son, and he's also a husband, and somebody loves him. So mm-hmm. How is it possible that he's just this singularity when none of us are? We're all very multifaceted. So to say he's a misogynist is really only forcing that projection to continue. I, for one, am not interested in living in that projection. So I'm very quick to look at what I'm denying within myself because I just don't want to play that game anymore.
Interesting. Very interesting. If you like what Tonya has to say, go to her website at Superpower Experts and look her up. Look at, what her group is all about. She has a community there. Let's talk about that community for a moment. We're going to go to a break in a minute. Okay, well, let me preface it with this then. You say that personal power can only take you so far. When you really want to change the world, you need superpower. And so you and your husband, I think, came up with Superpower Experts. And it's an amazing, you got a great show and it's an amazing concept. And you talk about, these mutants that you're searching for. And it's very cute and cool. But really, every single one of us, you say, has a superpower. And I believe that. I think that we do. Not always recognized, not always, self-actualized, but it's there if, you care to start looking for it. And when I come back from our break, let's talk about the different kinds of superpowers, because people think, well, I don't do this and I don't do that. But let's talk about what could be a superpower and what different people are presenting and what you believe them to be, because I think that's kind of cool. We're going to go to a commercial break. You are listening to Mission Unstoppable Radio. I am your host, Frankie Picasso, and my guest today is Tonya Dawn Recla.
Stop.
That's right. Don't stop listening. Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso will continue right after these messages.
Stop.
Congratulations on being the proud owner of an adorable, soft, cuddly, sweet-smelling, smiling, cooing, hungry, tired, gassy, screaming little bundle of joy. So now what? Where's the owner's manual for this thing? Where are my instructions? Right here. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet.com. Infant care specialist Blythe Lipman has worked with babies for over 20 years and works extensively with new parents, providing workshops, in-home visits, tips, and daily phone calls to ease those frazzled nerves. With Baby and Toddler Instructions, you can get the advice you need on how to survive and enjoy your baby's first year. For more information on Blythe and how she can help you, go to babyinstructions.com. From 32 ways to stop a baby from crying to 14 ways to get a baby to eat and so much more. It's Baby and Toddler Instructions with Blythe Lipman on TogiNet.com.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network, radio with a cutting edge.
It's merging never heard.
Got a lead foot? According to state troopers, here's what not to do when you get pulled over. Don't be a lachrymous and start crying right away. It doesn't help. But if you're under 20, crying won't be held against you. Don't ask for a break, and don't yell or start any argy-bargy. And one trooper said, if they're going to flirt with me to get out of a ticket, it would probably insult my intelligence. But unfortunately, I don't get hit on all that often. So flirting or being a gill flirt won't work. Did you know that 15% of all drivers get 76% of all traffic tickets? And the odds of winning if you challenge a traffic ticket in court are 1 in 3. So what should you do when you get pulled over for speeding? Be courteous to the officer, and most of all, be honest.
It's merging never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
We are back. You're listening to Mission Unstoppable Radio, and Tonya Dawn Recla is with me today. And when we went to break, we were going to talk about the kinds of superpower that we have. And so what, in your experience, or when you came up with the concept of superpowers, what were you thinking, and what has been your reality?
Well, I don't know if I get a lot of credit for coming up with the concept. I do operate in some pretty metaphysical spaces, and it was pretty clearly driven. The collaborative community, all of this stuff was a very clear message that I resisted for a while, and then the superpower concept came up, and I was in resistance early on with it. But what's unfolded from it is pretty remarkable. We delineate between predisposed superpowers versus unique superpowers, and so the predisposed superpowers would be like all the cool flashy stuff. So like the psychic ability, talking to dead people, clairsenses, mind reading, empathy, chameleon ability. And we're pretty good at assessing those. We do an assessment, and we can talk with people about, what they're predisposed to. And it helps provide clarity, because all of those things start off as really big challenges in our existence, every single one of them. And when you can neutralize the challenge, then you can start using them as the gift that they are. But those are really low level. Those are just abilities. And so while a lot of people like to say, well, I'm not psychic, or I don't have healing ability, we all have all of them. We're just predisposed to certain ones. And so we encourage people, work with what you're predisposed to first, and then start taking on the ones that you're not predisposed to. It's a little bit easier journey. But then we have the unique superpowers, that's what compels people to be like, I know I'm supposed to be doing more. Right. That's that mission, that purpose. And really what that comes down to is, like, for me, it's like multidimensional mastery, and some others where it's like I get how all of those predisposed superpowers, plus the packaging I chose this lifetime, how I look, how I speak, where I was born, the family, all of those things, my experiences all kind of tie nicely together in this really unique way that allow me to serve the world in a very specific way. And we refer to those as unique superpowers.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting. And I wonder how many people sell themselves short with their superpowers.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody. I've been doing that show for over 18 months now. And even people that have done I've had some amazing guests on the show, and they all get kind of like little kid, giddy about superpowers. Like, well, I don't know if I really have superpowers, or I've never really asked myself. And I'm just like, whoa, let me just illuminate this for you. And so one of my biggest gifts is really affirming for people their superpowers, because I exist in that abstract frequency and I see everyone there. I know, I see all of it. And so it's like, let me show you the element of you, the aspect of you that I see, that I connect with. And it's just magic what happens when people feel that piece of themselves. A lot of times I get the beautiful gift of connecting people with themselves. And for some people, it's the very first time they've ever really felt themselves. And so I have a pretty cool gig this lifetime. I paid the price in a couple ways, but where I sit now, my life is pretty magical.
Have you done your past life?
Yeah. Oh yeah. A few of them. Yeah, but once you start playing in those abstract frequencies, past, present, and future, the time lapse kind of goes away, and there's no separation between any of that. There's no separation between you and me, you or me, I am you. Like the synergy in that abstract frequency space, time and space just kind of go away. And so it's not linear like we like to think. Like our minds are really limited in our ability to comprehend.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to go there. Hold on. Okay, we're going to go here. You had some interesting people that you hung out with. You taught in Mexico. You organized a Fortune 500 conference in Italy, and you served as an instructor for a worldwide entrepreneurship organization alongside Bob Proctor, Les Brown, Sharon Lechter, David Corbin, other influential people. What was that like for you?
Well, we still do that. My husband and I contribute in a lot of different ways, and one of our favorite is to that community you're speaking of, CEO Space. Is one of the most is one of the forerunners, in my opinion, in business cooperative theory, and is just creating huge ripples of change in the world. And so that's become our business family. We've raised our daughter there. She's 7 and is one of the hosts of our podcast. She hosts Superpower Kids. She's done 5 or 6 different businesses. and she's writing a book right now that's getting sponsorship. Anybody wants to be a part of her best-selling book about young entrepreneurship. She's on a pretty magical journey, but she's a lot of the reason why my husband and I do what we do. And so some of the people she's connected with, some of the folks that we rub elbows with, if you will, is because we committed to being of service in the world. And so we find organizations that allow us to do that freely and with open hearts. And the payback is 10, 20-fold. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. So with the children, what is her show? She's reaching out to other kids about their superpowers?
She interviews adults and kids. So she interviewed J.P. Sears. She interviewed Kathy Lee Crosby, the original Wonder Woman. She's interviewed Liz Benny out of New Zealand, who does Kapow. She's interviewed a lot of people. So she just recently did her first kid interview. You would be amazed, and maybe you wouldn't be. It's very hard for her to find kid guests.
Sure.
And so some of it is the parents not really wanting their kids to go there, but there just aren't that many kids making huge waves. So if you're hearing this and you want to be a part, go to superpowerkids.com. She loves to interview, especially girls. She picked up really quickly. She goes, Mom, most of my guests are either women or they're boys. Women or men or boys. She goes, where are the girl entrepreneurs? Where are the girls that are doing this stuff? And I was like, guess you got to go find them, huh? So
and they're out there. I know they're out there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
they're out there.
She wants to connect with them. A lot of it is people just don't get it. Like they don't have a box to put her in. So the idea that she's 7 hosting a podcast is just like unfathomable. Like a legit podcast. And so, but it's real. Like you can go to our site and watch it. She was our first show that we launched after launching the podcast. We're in the process of launching 4 more. So we're going to be hosting 5 different shows under this moniker, and we'll have many, many more, I'd imagine. But that's part of the collaborative nature that we practice as Superpower Experts.
Yeah, very cool. I love that. You're never too young. Actually, yesterday I just heard about a conference going to be happening for kids to talk about innovative thinking and the kinds of thinking that you're talking about, and it's going to be held, I think, in November or something. I'm going to be talking to that lady very shortly.
Very cool. Yeah, maybe
so
connect her. Neva's got 5 speaking engagements between now and the end of the year. One's in front of an audience of about 2,500 people. She's doing a keynote.
Wow.
So it's like she blew up here over the last few months, and her light's just so bright. But she does the work. People ask us all the time, like, how does this happen? I'm like, she does the work. Like she works harder at this growth stuff than just about anybody, and she manages her triggers, and she walks the talk, and she asks for assistance in moving things and asks for different perspectives and is willing to kind of associate with those higher frequencies. She does the work. So there's no silver spoon in this girl's mouth. Like that wasn't the world she grew up in, but she willingly faces her demons on a regular basis.
Wow. Like what would be her demon?
Oh my gosh, she is so powerful, and as you can imagine, with that kind of power, the flip side of that coin is some pretty
dark
like tight gripping, not dark, just strong. The ego is strong, and that's going to be where her magic is going to lie in harnessing both of those and managing them. And so she has to manage all that, and it's just amazing to watch. But she'll go in and we have a room called the Vortex, and she'll go sit and grab some crystals and sit down and kind of or she'll come to me and say, Mom, help me move this stuff. Like she's gotten to the place where she's like, it's just too uncomfortable to stay in the throes of ego or anything of a low frequency. And she's willing to do the work to alleviate some of that and to transmute it. It's pretty remarkable. Kids are amazing.
Yeah, kids are amazing, and they're very close, to the metaphysical, and like they're open to it. They're open to the energies, and they feel it. They haven't, gotten numb yet. And usually, like, they're very open at the very beginning and early ages, and we're the ones that kind of say, no, that's not real. You don't hear that. You don't see that. You don't. It's not there. And yet, these children are coming in being born now with, and even, with the higher incidence of like even autism and being on the spectrum, that is, to me all about just being really open and not being able to handle it yet. Really, that's what I believe anyway.
Yep, and that's a big motivating factor for us, is to not shut her down and to not program her in shutting that down. So, well, we got another 2 minutes, I think, left in the show about that. What is it that you want people to know? I think it would be magical if people would just trust the highest element of who they are. We all know it. We are all hearing it. We're trying to talk to ourselves from that space. It's just the fear that gets in the way of that, and the programs and everything else. But it's all rooted in fear, and actually it's all rooted in fear of survival. Mm-hmm. And so take a moment each day just to connect with that space, because it feeds us. Ultimately, we're all desperately seeking connection with ourselves, with each other, with source, divine, whatever you want to call it, the universe, God, whatever floats your boat. But that, just take a moment each day to connect into that space, because you are that. You do exist there, and the petty kind of insecurities and everything else that comes up in life, those are just stories. And we get to create our stories. And if you're going to create them anyway, create a good one. Create something that's fun. Like there's no need to stay stuck in that when you lay claim to it. And don't be afraid of taking responsibility for the fact that you are creating your life. Mm-hmm. Own that, and then you can change it. Don't resist that power.
People always say, how do I change my life? I go, change your thought. That's it. It's just a change of thought.
Yeah. There's a lot of minds running amok.
www.superpowerexperts.com. Tonya Dawn Recla has been my guest today. You can check out her book, W.A.R. You can go to her website and look at her community. Maybe you want to join it. Maybe you want to talk about your superpowers. Who knows? Tonya, thank you so much for being my guest today. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show. And to my listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in each and every week. I do love you. And we will be back on Thursday with Frankie Sense and More. If you listen to that show, if not, I'll be back next week with another Mission Unstoppable and an unstoppable guest. And I want to thank my producer, Lisa, today for doing such a great job. And we will see you next week. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Don't stop.
When the chips were down, they didn't stop. Stories of people who, when the odds were against them, turned defeat into victory. You've been listening to Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso. See you next time, and always remember...
Don't stop.
Welcome to the living room, a cozy place of candid conversation.